Nithyananda.
Welcome back to Youth, and today we're talking about compassion. We felt that it was a very important topic to talk about, and we're talking more around compassion when specific actions and things happen to us. We can hold on to a lot of bitterness or vengeance or anger, and sometimes, we become so stubborn we hold on to it and feel like that, we can still hold it against that person but feel whole within ourselves of continuing on with our life. That is not the case. It ends up eating our whole spirit and our nature of continuing on to hold that. So we felt that it was really important to talk about compassion. I've been a grief counselor for quite a few years, and how I started to get involved with a lot of the young people is that, I saw so many people at the end of their life desperately trying to fix a lot of things that or make up for the time that they've lost of feeling and holding these vengeance times when specific things have happened. And it was something that was really impactful for me, of how many people had waited till the end of their life to try and make those changes. And so I really wanted to make a difference in young people's life of saying, these are the things that you need to do to work towards. And Swamiji talks a lot more about compassion and having that compassion and non-violence. And so it's something that, again, that kind of motivated me to do my work and to make some changes, that people don't spend their time in life holding these vengeance.
Right.
And so I know we talked about some stories, and thank you for coming back. Megan's going to be going back to Canada and then returning again, so we wanted to make sure we had...
It's blizzarding.
Blizzarding, it's minus 20, minus 30.
Yeah, I'm wandering around here without a coat.
So we felt it was really important because of some of her stories that she has shared with me, and some that I will share of myself, and of course some people that I've known that have made some changes. So that's the things that we wanted to talk about. What are your thoughts around compassion and nonviolence, of what Swamiji has talked about?
Well, I find his angle very interesting, because originally I was into trying to learn about forgiveness, and sometimes that's a real tricky one. The people who tried to kill me and kidnap my son, like there's this list of, and your ego tells you you're so justified. Oh, you should hold on to that, or you have every right. And unfortunately, your friends in society encourage that. Yes. Of course you should, he should hang. Really hang on to it. And forgiveness is a real tricky one to wrap your head around. And I like Swamiji's take, focusing more on compassion. So instead of trying to forgive someone for what they might have done to you, his angle is understand what that person was going through, or where they were coming from, or what the circumstances were, to try and put yourself in their shoes. And that actually works a lot better, because I realized what troubled souls I had come up against. I happened to just go head to head with people who were in turmoil, who were just absolutely desperate. And when you start to realize that they probably weren't even seeing me. They were reacting to their engrams, their samskaras, all their past issues, and it just makes it easier to realize a lot of people are like a hurt child. You're really not dealing with an adult. You're dealing with someone who started being hurt at a young age and as a result never grew up. And when I started to look at these people more as children, it was a lot easier to find compassion in my heart for them, because it is someone who never really had a chance, never was nurtured, never loved. And what a sad place to be in. At least no matter how bad things got, I knew I was loved unconditionally by the universe, and that never left us. And I remember one day after, all hell breaking loose, and literally my 3-year-old and I sitting on the cliffs watching the sunset, and I'm watching everyone pack up their SUVs and go home to their houses, and probably pizza night and movie night, and we're sitting there like on the beach, and And I remember, just looking at my kid and saying, I used to spend thousands of dollars to fly from Canada to sit here and watch this sunset on vacations, and now I'm doing it for free. And he's like, for free, and so we sat there and sort of celebrated that. So no matter how bad things got, I still was better off than anyone who was trying to hurt me, and it made it easier to forgive them and feel that compassion, because nothing more could be taken away from me, and I knew I was loved. And I think when you try to go to that spot in your heart, it might be trickier when you're right in the middle of it. Like, it is hard when a lesson's going on to be profound and sit on the outside and go, well, I know why this is happening. You're usually screaming or trying to stop shaking, but the more you can breathe through it, and as Swamiji, his best term is unclutch. Disconnect from a situation and understand why this energy is hit. Like, why are you two going head to head at this moment in time? And through the grace of existence, I kept getting hit with these events over and over, 10 years solid of the earth shaking, and it shakes you out of it. You become an observer because you can't function. You can't keep being in the middle of it anymore, and you do start standing to the side and going, wow, look at this one, and then it's really easy to see compassion for both sides, to view my character and go, wow, you always react like that. That's too bad. It's too bad you always fly off the handle, or you go into this mode. And I started to see how I had a behavior pattern that had to stop.
Can you maybe explain a little bit? Because I think that really helps the youth of, the patterns that we end up going through, and how we respond. Actually, we always are easy to blame and say, well, I have no control. This and this happens to me. But, it's really about how we're responding, or that the universe is going to keep giving us in order for us to, move forward. And that's hard for people to understand, especially when it's very difficult situations. Which I will talk, about my death of my mother and some of that. But, when we have things of, people, especially when it's, like I said, someone's trying to kill you, or it's maybe abuse, very obviously difficult. Some, a parent has killed a parent, or there's some really difficult things for people to move on from. So I think it really helps to talk about the same patterns that happened, and then how you've kind of moved out of that. Right,
and I think one of my biggest patterns was the big angry guy pattern. If someone was, and it started with my father, if someone was big enough and angry enough, I would shut down. I'd stop functioning and go into a victim mode. Instead of sort of being empowered and, standing toe-to-toe with someone and not being angry, but at least stating my case, being able to not back down. And so what the universe did to get me out of it was kept giving me bigger and angrier guys. Like, it just went on and on, the big angry guy syndrome. And I remember I had gotten involved with meditation through Kriya Yoga, was my initial, before getting into Nithyananda's great Nitya Dhyan and everything. So I at least had a meditation practice going, and what happened finally is the biggest, angriest guy, it was a cult, and they were trying to kidnap my son and throw me out in the street, and he was probably 6'2", had the red hair, long red hair in a top knot, just a huge towering inferno. And he started screaming at me, and I just, all of a sudden it ended, like it snapped, and he wasn't even there anymore, and I just felt this gentle breeze blowing by me. Like, it was such a profound, the switch got turned off. It was like, the judge, the panel was watching, went, oh, she won, flipped the switch, and it stopped. And of course, he saw this reaction on my face. I just started smiling in the middle of his tirade, and his mouth just clanged shut. He spun around and walked away because he knew I was done. He knew he could not manipulate me anymore with the behavior, and it ended instantly. And it was such a amazing revelation to realize that I was triggering this behavior in people to teach me a lesson. And when Swamiji talks about flowing with things and the illusion of it all, and when you realize that It's just like playing a game. You literally pick the destination and the level, and you go, I want to go in that room and have this test. Life is the same way. You flip the switch, and all of a sudden this little scene plays out. And even though it's somebody who you could go, why are they trying to kill me? Why are they beating me? Why, whatever. If you can just understand, you have been given this lesson for a reason. This is playing out. It's an act. And it's playing out for a reason, and the minute you get it, it stops. And the night that the homelessness stopped, I was literally in an abandoned motel room with my baby. He was up on a stack of boxes, tanking rain, the rain's pouring in under the door, and I just cried and cried, and I couldn't believe I was there. I couldn't believe that my degree and all my credentials couldn't stop me from being in this bizarre situation. In another country, I couldn't be rescued by my family. I was isolated, and so I finally talked to existence and just said, I don't know how to get out of this. Like, I don't know how I got here. And I said, I surrender, I give up. Like, whatever you want, I'll do it. But I can't take anymore. And it ended. Like, the next morning, there was nothing in my head, and I sort of went, waiting for the divine knock on the door. Here's your ticket out of here. And I'm sort of, the cat's waiting. Any time now, Meg. Let's get out of here. And so I waited, and then finally I just asked myself, I said, so what should I do? And it was, call Jennifer. So that was a friend. So I went out to the phone booth and called Jennifer, and she got there in like minus 10 seconds. She came so fast, she made time move backwards. And it amazed me. She said, this whole town has been waiting for you to ask for help. She said, but you were so proud, and we didn't want to insult you. But she said everyone knew what was going on. And she loaded my kid and the cat and I up and whisked me off to her place, and I was working in the greenhouses, so I did have cash every day, but not enough. America, first, last, and a damage deposit, for a place, you need $2,000. So to go from homeless to having $2,000 in your pocket is just such a massive leap. So friends just started taking us in, and I was working every day, and so all of a sudden baby steps, we learned how to live again. We learned how to be in society again. But it was the same thing. I had to get it. I had to understand why the universe was throwing this at me, until I got that I was supposed to surrender to it and stop fighting it. It was like, everyone's in this beautiful raft going down a whitewater rafting trip, and I'm in the water, and they're all going, get in the boat, get in the boat. No, I'm having more fun here.
Hitting rocks,
hitting rocks
coming off.
That's right. And being angry at the people.
Angry because of that.
Yeah. And it's your fault I'm in here. Well, no, it's your fault you're in here. So, it's all about, the feeling compassion for others and forgiveness for others is because you're all playing a scene. And as soon as you get what the lesson is in that scene, it ends. So it's nobody's fault that it started. Nobody's the hero for it ending. It's all about playing out this act and learning.
And I think, that always reminds me of, when they always said there's only the one footprint that you're walking along and nobody is there. And
right.
And it's always that, that's because they are carrying you.
God was carrying you. Yeah. Yeah.
And it is so true, as we were talking, my mom had cancer when I was 10. And so she was pretty well terminal since, when I was 10. But she was sick for about 4 years. She fought for quite a very long time.
Which is hard on a kid.
Which is really hard, especially at 10, And so she did die at 14. But so I had decided as a kid that, I was going to be the best kid ever. I carried my Bible and I read it every day. And, I went to this little church and, prayed my little heart out. And, I did everything. Cleaned the house. I was just did everything I could. And of course, my mom kept getting sicker. Right? So, I was saying to God, I mustn't, and kids always take that upon themselves. So, I'll be even better. I'll do this and I'll do that. So, of course, she's continued to get, more terminal. So And kind of the day before she was going to die, they said, you should be probably saying, your last words. And I'm like, no, I know that God's going to come through.
Oh, boy, yeah.
So, I got on my hands and knees, and, I just prayed my heart out and cried my heart out.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she died the next day. And I remember as a kid, at 14, of just putting that Bible away and just saying, never, ever will I love again. And, that was kind of when I was 14.
Yeah.
So as I went with an adult, I had that anger. I couldn't be angry at my mom because it was not my mom's fault, so it was easier to do with, like, God.
Yeah.
And kind of having that bitterness and vengeance. And I didn't realize, but a lot of, like I said, anger. And so as you grow up in an adult, and the reason that we wanted again to talk about this is that we think that, it'll just go away. It starts to happen as a kid. And, when you become an adult, it doesn't go away. Swamiji so beautifully says that, is that, you can't be two different people. I'm going to be in this situation where I'm going to be having, this bitterness and this anger against that, and that was against relationships that I had. Everything that's love, and so that was kind of not wanting to get close to people. And it's true, you can't. You have, think, I could love myself, but in this situation, I can be this way, and you end up, doing the same for yourself. And
a lot of conflict,
and actually just it ends up eating yourself.
And that's what I noticed, is hanging on to that anger and rage and not forgiving or feeling compassion. It doesn't hurt anybody but you. It just starts eating you inside. And what I started feeling was the weight of the world on my shoulders. And literally, when I started letting go every angry hurtful situation, as I let it go, the weight lifted. And you start feeling light.
And that's really true when you have this deep compassion for whatever that's happened. And I know it's hard sometimes with kids, but that's why we wanted to talk about it. And having kind of this non-violence, and that it's mirroring, and so you need to be able to have that within yourself. And this opens up this huge area, and the cosmic will look after you. The master will look after you. So because I see so many, it took so many years out of my life of deep suffering that I thought that I, wasn't. That it was kind of a separate thing. But as you were saying, my relationships broke down, like it would have to be a constant thing, and it would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it was really important when I finally said, this insanity has to stop. Because it's true, it got bigger, and my relationships, they got worse. And
the feeling of heaviness, you wake up in the morning exhausted already. And it's because it's like you're dragging all these chains and weights behind you.
And I got really stubborn and said, no, I'm right, And some of it, I'd have to say is subconscious. That I literally didn't maybe consciously do that. But, I knew, like, I was holding on, and I was going to be proved right. That, I was done wrong as a kid. But all it does is, again, do more suffering for yourself. And it just eats your soul, and you don't move forward. So cosmic, with the deep love, and with the master, they just keep getting.
Well, and he says, the illnesses that then, you look at how many angry, unforgiving people are out there, and how much cancer is just epidemic. Probably 80% of the people I know back in Canada are dealing with cancer, which is an astounding number. But you talk to them, and I didn't realize what a period of grace it was for me to be homeless because of what I learned. And then I come back to society, and there's these people holding, well, she called me this, and so I'm never forgiving her. And I'm like, come on, you're not forgiving that? I forgave someone who tried to kill me. Why am I, a fight at the bridge club?
But you hold on. It's just this intensity of saying I'm right. The ego gets involved, and it's like, I'm just going to prove that that's not, that you waste so much time in one's life, and honestly, you're the one that ends up doing the suffering. Because it does end up either in disease or, impacts relationships. It's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual.
Well, and as Swamiji said, it shrinks you. Like, instead of expanding, the universe is constantly expanding, we're supposed to be expanding. Instead, you have a black hole in you that just sucks in everything. You become this, and you see it in old people, these shriveled, their faces are tight, and it's all this bitterness and rage because they could never feel compassion for someone else. It's me, you know, I've been wronged, kind of thing. So yeah, it's not pretty.
Yeah, and so when I, you know, like I said, when I worked in hospice, and I'm looking back, and it's just, you know, people are trying to rectify, you know, 60 years of their life,
Wow.
or 80 or whatever, and within 3 months short period, you know, they're running around with this compassion and kind of having this nonviolence and being able to, and you can see this expansion when you work in the hospice. As soon as I saw that, I could see this energy move, and it just, like Swamiji says, expanded, and it just lifted. And it was just something that I said, you know, I'm going to start working with young people. If someone worked with me very young, and I can't say I wasted a lot of years, because, you know, obviously maybe that's some of my path. But I could have moved forward so much faster if I just allowed that to let go. And be able to, you know, it's fine, okay, if I'm angry, it's fine to work through all of those emotions, but allow that to happen instead of holding so tight. And I'm not going to let anyone else hurt me as a kid. Well, and of course the closest things are any relationships that you're going to have. So it's just, you know, I'll always be protecting myself.
And it is tricky for teens, just because that is such a hormone fueled time that it's easy to hold grudges and have emotional breakdowns and everything. But, you know, if you can just keep a post-it note on the mirror or something to remember that everybody is in the same boat, like everyone you're bumping up against is having rage issues and hormone issues, and, you know, people are not meaning to hurt your feelings, probably, you know, they're just spewing. But it's a pressure cooker.
And that's just so true about judgment of others, because it's so quick to make judgments about others, that they have a better life, or that there's nothing wrong with, you know, like I said, a perfect life. There's no such thing. And majority of the time, when, you know, everybody has something in their life. And so that's where, again, I just love the approach of Swamiji for compassion and have nonviolence. And I mean, he's just gone through a very difficult time, and I mean, he just said, you know, I come from a compassion, everything is completely open in the cosmos. And as soon as, you know, these things came to surface and left, he's at the same spot.
Right.
You know, he's, and even farther, like, you know, the sign goes, you know, there and just.
Well, and that's what he mentioned, was that because of the nonviolent, compassionate stance, everyone recovered faster. Whereas
suffering is not there. You know, that they just move through it. Move
faster, and that's what I see as events in my life. I move through very quickly, like good, bad, whatever. They're just moving. It's like the river. It's just flowing, and there's such an ease to it, because you're not carrying these loads with you constantly. It comes, it goes.
It comes and goes.
Yeah.
And I think too, I've really learned a lot about awareness. You know, I can easily sometimes get into those where I hold things in and I don't want to talk, you know, about it if something happens. And then I think, okay, I'm just, you know, removing myself from a situation, and then it's just better. But again, it's more about the impact that it has on me, because it's again holding in something, you know, that you're frustrated with. And so it's important that you talk with that person or work that through, and pretending to yourself that, you know, it's okay, it's over, I'm just not going to deal with that situation. But it is something that's very similar, and at a little, you know, smaller scale, but it is just very similar, that you want to be right, it becomes an ego, and, you know, you get stubborn about a situation. But it always is that it suffers for yourself.
Well, and that energy shift is so profoundly easy. You know, you think, oh, I could never walk back into the room with that person, or like I had a situation with a family member, and we had a falling out for 7 years, and I wasn't allowed, you know, basically in the house. And finally, there was a death in the in-laws' family, and it started to shift. Like, everyone started to realize, why are we holding on to this kind of stuff? And so my son and I were finally invited for a family dinner, and my son was old enough to have realized what had been happening, and he said, so what do we do? And I said, well, how about we just go and pretend they're new people, like we're meeting them for the first time, instead of, you know, 7 years. You know? And so we showed up, and everyone was twitching. They were so nervous. Like, you could tell everyone was ready for a bomb to go off, because of the, oh, you know, this should be a big deal. and we just went in and sort of laughed and giggled, and at the end of the night, I got the biggest hug and tears, you know, from my main adversary, who couldn't believe that it had just been let go, that it was that easy. And I realized that, you know, it should all be that easy. Just, there's no reason to drag the past in, just start over. Just, you know, as Swamiji says, just throw yourself in a dumpster. Which is, that's one of my favorite visuals. The number of times I've pictured myself in a dumpster staring at the stars and going, well, Swamiji says I belong here. And it works. Like, just throw it out. Like, whatever your personality is, who you are, just throw it in the dumpster. It's not working.
Yeah.
Start fresh.
Start fresh.
That's right.
And
this hologram's trash.
Yeah, just, you know, and that is just so true, because we waste so many time and years like that, and it is really true of how you respond, and that's kind of the law of attraction too. You know, so you're going to be really stubborn, and that's going to start to happen. That person ends up feeling that energy, and so that just ends up increasing it. And so we end up having, we're the one that's attracting that. Right. As soon as we let that go, and like I said, put that in the dumpster, it's gone.
Well, and it spreads and affects.
The person doesn't have that intense energy that's pulling towards them. They feel the shift and the release. Right. And they've talked a lot about that, you know, of people finally releasing from it. The person has actually talked about that when they're doing some research of some release themselves, when they're not even in the same room. Right. And all of a sudden that opens, and that's what the universe is opening now, you know, because you're allowing that energy to flow. Right. It's kind of like, you know, that you're having this, I think Swamiji talked about having walls and doors. And the doors can open, but the walls, you know, so it's just, these can't. So it's just, you know, if you have a door, it can open. And so once that is, they can feel that energy that's going through. And it's just really important for us to start to really look at, like I said, going into kind of, I always like that dumpster too. Because I'm visual, because it helps. You know, sometimes you have these things and you can laugh about it, and it's just in the dumpster, and it's gone, and you know, you just end up moving. And you know, it does take courage at times that we have to say either we were wrong, and even if we weren't, you know, we just wanted to have compassion, because obviously the person either going through a difficult time, or you know, we're you know, pushing each other's buttons because the universe wants us to move past whatever is going to be there. And it can be difficult to see, like you said, when, you know, someone was trying to kill you, or, you know, you're having a parent die, or, you know, you have an abusive situation. When some things are, you know, very difficult in life, it is hard to see. But it's hopefully that we've helped a little bit of things to go through, and our stories, I think, always do help for young people to see and to move on with their life and to be. You know, life is beautiful when you let it go. Just, it is beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing. It really was a pleasure, and thank you for sharing. It really does help. And I'll be here virtually from minus 30 degrees. Wishing I was here in this hot room. That's right. Wish I was sweating on NTV again. So we do ask that you send in any emails or any questions. I know that we've had some emails around, you know, having a parent die and having a lot of rage and anger and not wanting to have someone close. And, you know, that's kind of spurred this talk on compassion and nonviolence. And, you know, we learned a lot from what was happening with Swamiji. And scandal, and like what he said, that there's been no suffering. You know, people have just now moved straight through it, and you know, there's just a lot that we can. There's so much in life to do, and it is where you're, you know, stuck in a specific situation for so long that doesn't need to happen. That if we just allow that to let go. So thank you, and hopefully you stay warm. We'll stay warm here. And we look forward for you to join us at the next show. Nithyananda.